Okay, I mentioned in the last video about Nietzsche's diagnosis. What is his diagnosis? Western culture is anti-life. It's slave morality. It's resentment. It's weakness. What's the cure? Pro-life, strength, will to power, the unconditional affirmation of life, the Dionysian, the intoxication with life versus the crucified, versus weakness, right? Versus guilt and legalism and law. Okay, and this pro-life philosophy for Nietzsche is best embodied in a character, he thinks. And this is a sort of fictitious character that he thinks is to come. He thinks of himself as like John the Baptist to Christ. He's just proclaiming, he's just the forerunner to this Ubermensch or Superman. What's the Superman? Okay, two things about the Superman. Number one, the Superman is free from revenge, free from resentment. There is no needing to get even, or there is this, the Ubermensch is the person who can forget easily. They can overcome revenge. Nietzsche says famously in a book called Thus Spake Zarathustra, what, now how does the quote go? That man be delivered from revenge. This is for me the highest hope in a rainbow after long storms. If we can overcome our resentment and our revenge, we could overcome then our weakness and affirm life. How do we do this? Well, so that's the first point. The Ubermensch is someone free from revenge. Two, the Ubermensch is a creator of value, a conscious value creator. We don't think, the Ubermensch doesn't think values come from the world or that nature has to conform to these values like social justice or God or whatever. The Ubermensch rather is more like an artist, someone who consciously creates these values out of himself and knowingly does it. So he's a kind of, or she's a kind of conscious value creator, someone who recognizes that they are imposing meaning on the world rather than meaning coming at them. This is very important for Nietzsche. So long as we think meaning is coming at us, he thinks we're going to be more and more resentful. But once we recognize we can see through everything, we recognize that there's no right and wrong, there's no good or bad, there's just power, and then I can consciously construct my world, okay? That's what Nietzsche thinks about. That's his sort of cure for this. We need to become the Ubermensch. Or Ubermensch, by the way, in German just means Superman, right? Or super person or meta-human. Uber meaning beyond, or meta, and Mensch meaning person or human or man or whatever. The Ubermensch affirms life. This is what the Ubermensch says: what does not kill me makes me stronger. When some suffering happens to you, you affirm it rather than deny it, rather than take flight into another world and hope for karma or hope for revenge or ask God to smite your enemies. The Ubermensch says, what does not kill me makes me stronger in relation to suffering. And therefore, remember the other quote I think I mentioned by Nietzsche, if we have a why, we can endure anyhow. We find a why, but we impose the why. So it's not as though we find the why, but we impose the why on the world. And when we impose that on the world, we can deal with suffering. Okay, so I say then, in affirming life, what does not kill me makes me stronger. Okay, so the Ubermensch is this being, this person that is to come, this meta-human that is free from revenge and affirms life because they create their own values. Okay, it's really interesting to think about that for a second. So long as I think that there is injustice in the world that I have to correct, that's a problem for Nietzsche. I think Nietzsche thinks we're better off being artists or creative expressions as human beings rather than beings that need to find meaning.